Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello everybody at home and welcome to Houselights, specifically House of Scott. That's right, Ridley Scott, the one and only Ridley Scott. And today we are doing something a little bit different. If you didn't listen to our episode last week where we explained it, let's explain it again. We're not starting with Ridley Scott's first movie. We're not starting with the 80s or the 90s and then doing an all-encompassing works of Ridley Scott within that decade. We're doing something a little bit differently, something that we've never done before. And what we're doing is we're tackling Ridley Scott's historical epics, which, if any of you know anything about Scott, he loves his sword and sandal films and he loves his historical epics. But we're taking it even further, and we're not doing it in order of release. We're doing it in temporal order of when the movie takes place. So this week, we're doing 2014's Exodus, Gods and Kings. And I am so excited to start this journey with you guys because it is going to be an epic journey. Yes, pun intended. And I wouldn't have anybody else with me other than the two men sitting with me, John Mills and Darren Moser. John, how are you doing?
Well, I was actually pondering this. I'm glad you mentioned the colon because I was thinking, colons are necessary in epic pictures or sequels. And this is not a sequel, which I wondered at the time if maybe that was a titling problem or a challenge for some markets because, usually when you see a colon in the title, it means it's a sequel, like Star Trek Insurrection or, any of a litany of things. And so... Yeah. Did anybody come into this being like, well, where's the first Exodus movie? I didn't see part one.
I wonder if somebody was just like, hey, what's going on here? But apparently the reason is that I didn't think that you could copyright titles. I could have sworn that you couldn't copyright titles, that the only title that was movie title that was copyrighted was Star Wars. But for some reason there is a movie called Exodus and they couldn't get the rights to it. And so they had to do Exodus, Gods and Kings. That's the story behind that. I have no idea if it's true. It's what I read. It's what I heard. C'est la vie. And here we are.
Indeed.
Darren, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Yeah, I mean, he does have some other colons. It was almost like a comma situation. Like, you can't just say Exodus, Gods and Kings. You have to say Exodus, pause, Gods and Kings. Mm-hmm. But I did watch the right movie this time, guys. I almost watched whatever that other trash heap movie that
Gods of Egypt.
Yeah, Gods of Egypt. I almost
you thought that's what we were going to be talking about, and both John and I were like, no.
I mean, they probably have the same Rotten Tomato score, so if I just went off of that, it would have been a little sad. But I did watch. I read up on my Bible, as it were.
I did reread Exodus for this in preparation. I don't know what it's going to do for me. Because I saw someone describe this movie as the gritty reboot of the Old Testament.
I will admit, I don't want to tip my hand here, but at one point during the movie, I was like, I'm pretty sure this is, I did flip through where I was like, okay, I'm just checking to see. Okay. All right. But it very much seems to draw on additional sources that have been sort of thrown in the ring about Moses's supposed origin and the his legend and stuff like that have been thrown out there since that they don't contradict so much as maybe supplement the understanding of him in the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, as it was going, I mean, I was pretty sure that we were going to get plagues, but at the beginning, I was like, what? I wouldn't put it past Ridley Scott to just not have the plagues and have it all be a military conquest. Like, I mean, sure, it's completely throwing out the source material, but hey, but obviously that's not the direction it went. But for about half a second, it was.
Yes.
This movie really kind of threw you a little bit. You didn't quite know which direction this movie was going to take because especially when he hits his head on Mount Sinai, we're like, oh, okay. Like, even his wife is just like, nope, you hit your head. You didn't talk to God. Whatever you saw wasn't real. And she's a believer. She's a true believer.
Mm-hmm.
And she was telling him it didn't happen. He's like, no, it did. And so the audience is kind of in doubt. And even when Joshua sees him, he sees him alone, talking to himself, but he has faith that he's talking to somebody, that he's not just crazy. One of my favorite phrases is when you talk to God, it's prayer, but when God talks to you, it's schizophrenia. So which direction were they going to go in this movie? And even and Darren, and like you're talking about, even with the plagues, like the way that they started was grounded in reality. And they even had that his science advisor saying, no, totally. No, this isn't supernatural, like this is the reasoning. But then they had the angel of death at the end. You're like, oh, okay. So they really are going with God is real and the supernatural powers are real and everything like that. And so it took that long to do it, but we're really putting the cart before the horse. But this is really great. I'm glad that we have a lot of stuff to discuss. When was the first time that you guys saw this? John, when was the first time you saw this?
Right before we recorded.
Yesterday.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I'm the only one who had seen this before.
Yes.
Okay.
I remember distinctly that it got rather savaged in its reviews. And I was casting a hairy eyeball at it to begin with. And then once the reviews came in, I was like, yeah, I'll get around to it. And I just never got around to it.
I mean, at its core, it's kind of just a more modern retelling of Exodus. So more modern effects, more modern cinematography. And I don't know, guys, it's really hard to top the bar of Prince of Egypt. Like Prince of Egypt, I think, is one of the best tellings of this story. It's got some good musical numbers in it too. So 0 musical numbers in this one, guys. 0.
None.
Darren was disappointed.
Highly disappointed.
So when I was growing up, Exodus was my favorite book of the Bible. And I was obsessed with the 10 Commandments movie by Cecil B. DeMille with Chuck Heston. One of my favorite movies of all time. Still is. I love it to death. It's an amazing motion picture. And Exodus is an amazing story. And so I saw this right away. I didn't see it in theater, but as soon as it was released, I saw it. And, I'm a big Ridley Scott fan. I'm a big Christian Bale fan. And I know it got raked over the coals with reviews. And I think a lot of controversy because of whitewashing with a lot of characters where, like, not only did they not cast Egyptians or people of any kind of African descent for most of the parts, they got like the whitest people that you possibly could. But I still wanted to see it because I was just like, okay, I'll try to put all that controversy aside and just view it for the movie that it is. Like, try to view the characters for their performances and the direction, everything like that. And because Ridley Scott is one of my favorite directors of all time. And the first time I saw it, I was kind of like, why wasn't this better? Why? Like, all the pieces were there. Why wasn't this better?
Were they? Were all the pieces there?
I do think so. Objectively, I do think so, because you have great actors, you have great cinematography. I mean, the story, you got great source material. It's been working for a few years, and you have great plot, you have great performances, and you have a great director, and you have great action sequences. So why wasn't that better? Now, I do want to say, though, that watching it in preparation for this podcast, I watched it with my wife. This was her first time seeing it. And I kept telling her, I was like, this is terrible. Let's just get through it. I need to do it for the podcast. And I enjoyed it a whole lot more than I did the first time. Now, do I think it's amazing? No, but I had a much better experience.
I think that, the first thing naturally that any movie has to start with is a strong enough script. And I think that this reeks of just they couldn't quite figure out exactly how far they wanted to go in one direction or the other. I think it's pretty evident from the script that they wrote. And even if you look at the credits, right, like Adam Cooper and Bill College and Jeffrey Kane and Steven Zalian, that right there, it shows you, oh man, this went through a lot of rewrites and a lot of writers. Right. And it's additionally, and This is one of those things where I do think it matters the passion that somebody has for the source material, especially when it comes to something like this. There are a lot of things where it matters how much passion somebody has for the source material. And while I'm not making any sort of insane statement like an atheist can't direct a biblical movie, I think that the lack of emotion, this is a movie where somebody came on and was like, okay, I know what to technically do. I don't really care about the rest of it. You need to infuse a big historical epic like this with a certain amount of passion. And that passion needs to originate from behind the camera. This is very obviously a movie which has the aura about it of Ridley Scott comes to you and says, I'm going to make a big epic action movie about Moses. Do you want to be in it? Well, of course I do. Yeah, absolutely. My agent's going to sign me up right away. And a whole bunch of people jumping on board just because it's Ridley Scott making a movie and you want to work with a famous director or a very accomplished director, I should say. And I just don't think the material fits him. I don't. Like Kingdom of Heaven, which we'll get to, that's different, right? Because he's not trying to sell any sort of faith-based article to anybody. I sort of knew that Scott himself wouldn't have been terribly connected to the source material by the epigraph that opens at the beginning, the words that show up on the black screen. And at the end, it's like, and their God has not forgotten them. I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. Did Scott connect with the idea that God was real? Because that's sort of core to how the story shakes out at the end of it, because all of the doubt sort of melts away. And I didn't get that sense of buy-in from him for the sake of the movie.
Dan, what about you? Jumping off of what John just said, do you feel like Ridley Scott was the wrong director for the source material, or do you think it was the writing? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you agree with what John said? Do you have an alternate opinion?
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of what John said. I mean, thinking on the plagues as well, they did have a lot of, even from the very first one, where it's like, oh, the crocodiles killed a lot of things and that caused the blood in the Nile. I'm like, well, that's a lot of crocodiles killing a lot of things. Like, so already you're not doing a supernatural. It's like you're seeing the cause and effect and things like that. And like you said, the Egyptians are like, oh, well, this is the reason for this. And yeah, until you get to the killing of the firstborn. But yeah, it's, I mean, I'm probably going to make a lot of comparisons, between this and Prince of Egypt, but Prince of Egypt is a stylized telling of the story. It's stylized in the way it you have emotion, you have characters, you have the music. This was like, I don't want to go so far as to say no style, but it was like, oh, because it's real and because it's going to look real, they're going to be in the mud and it's going to be dark and it's going to be, all natural light sources. Like it's all hitting all those numbers that a historical epic made in the, 2010s is going to hit. But the story, it needs to have something that is making you connected. Otherwise, it's almost like you're watching a documentary. Like if there's no substance there besides, I made a photoreal Exodus. Well, great. Good job. Like that. So maybe it wasn't the best fit for Scott. I mean, maybe even something like Nolan, who I think would take it in a stylized direction. Like I don't know. It's hard to say.
Well, with Nolan, the Red Sea parting would have been caused by a temporal paradox that was triggered by somebody who had something in the future or something like that. But that's the thing is I actually wish, because look, I mean, it's a movie version and it's whatever. I don't come into something like this being like, this should be just like the Bible. That's not what I signed up for.
Right.
And I wish that Scott would have actually picked a lane and just said, you know what? We're going to make it so that nobody knows for sure whether God's involved, right? That Moses is saying, look, this stuff happened, and all of these things. And then I think it would have even been a great thing to mess with the audience and leave with the question of, who was behind the death of the firstborn sort of thing. Like, and have Ramses sort of like lose his mind, like, you did this. And Moses be like, I swear I didn't. But like the audience is left questioning, right? Like what's happening here?
Like Moses has an army. If he really wanted to, did he sneak into all of the firstborn houses and actually do it? Like, obviously we know in the main in the story that didn't happen, but it's left it more ambiguous.
Right. And I think that would have been good.
There is a real world theory, like a scientific theory, as to how maybe the firstborn Egyptians died and it was just the Egyptians. Now it's a big stretch, and like people admittedly believe that it's a big stretch. Like, but when you try to look at any kind of real world examples or scientific examples as to how the plagues happened and how they kind of like dominoed each other, like one of those dominoes was the firstborn in Egyptian culture was often celebrated, and there was a celebration. That there was a day when all firstborns would be celebrated and get special food. And so some people believe that maybe because of all those plagues, that special food that was set aside just for the firstborns was tainted because of the previous plagues. And that's how they all woke up dead. Again, just an idea. It's thrown out there. Again, a lot of people say this is a stretch, but of course, trying to apply scientific logic to mysticism in the Bible, it's hard. It's a big back and forth. And John, I'm with you where I got kind of excited. Like when Moses hit his head, I was like, oh, cool. Like, is this the route they're going to go? Where like he's, like, is he talking to God? Is he talking to an angel? Or is it all in his head?
Mm-hmm.
But, and it really tests you because like the three of us are believers. And so we would look at it as a specific lens. We're like, no. It's not because he hit his head. It's a red herring. Like God's actually there. Like his Malak, the angel, is actually there. While other people are saying like, oh, that's their out. Like people, like atheists, agnostics, non-believers, whatever you want to call them. Like that's their out to believe that this is just going to be a good story. But then you have that question at the end where it's just like, wait, what is this? Like did the spinning top topple over? Did it keep spinning? Like what's going to go on here? And I was a little disappointed when they started getting more and more mystical.
Do you think that was because they were afraid of ticking people off? Do you think that was one of those things where they hedged their bets because they didn't want to upset too many people? Not because Scott would be afraid of reaction or anything like that.
Because we all know that Scott would not give a damn.
He's no stranger to controversy, but it would have been, I could easily see a studio note saying, no, this one we got to soften, like, because they still would have been basically post 2004 religious themed film. It became a little more mainstream in a sense. And so would the studio have given the request to Scott? Would Scott have played ball? I don't even know if he would have played ball. If they said, hey, could we maybe just give something to the believers in the audience here and just go with it sort of thing? I mean, at the rate at which Ridley Scott produces films, if he's not terribly connected to it, I could see him going like, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, rework the end.
Yeah, the problem is that I think you're right. I think Scott is that type of person where like we've never known him. Like he's argued and battled with studios before. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why Ridley Scott Associates and Scott Free, his two companies, exist, is so that he can have more, more control over his own projects. Like, yeah, there's always going to be money men. Yeah, there's always going to be distributors. Like those are his production companies. Like he's not going to own Warner Brothers or Universal or anything like that. So you gotta bow down to the money men sometimes. And actually, that's one of the controversies was he's straight up, like Ridley Scott straight up said, he's like, if I put a non-white in the lead, I wouldn't have gotten funding. Now, I said it in a much nicer way than what Scott said, but it's absolutely true. And whether that's right or wrong from a moral standpoint is immaterial when it comes to the money men. So he wanted this money to get made, and he's going to put Joel Edgerton and Christian Bale in the lead, like it or not. And that's how it happened. And so he's already thinking about that in mind. He's already thinking about it from a commercial aspect and from a money man perspective. And if he isn't as connected to the material as a believer, you could see, because he's a self-admitted agnostic, you could see that him going like, okay, fine, whatever. As long as I get my action scenes, as long as I get, the performances that I want, let's like bow to the Christians' needs just so they get their butts in the seats.
Well, not just the Christians though, because the Jewish members of the audience would have been a little sensitive to it as well.
I should thank you for correcting me. I should have said Judeo-Christian.
Although
needs.
Additionally, let's not leave out the Muslims who also recognize Moses as a great prophet.
Oh my goodness! So, yes, the God of Abraham, the people who follow the God of Abraham.
Yes.
Yep. Let me phrase it that way.
Yes.
Abrahamic religions.
There you go.
It's just I feel like the Christians complain more when it comes to cinema.
We do. I was just looking. I did not realize that was Sigourney Weaver as Tuya. I did not pick up on that at all when I was watching.
And what a waste! What an absolute waste.
She's in it for what, like 30 seconds?
Yeah.
She's in it just for the scene where it's like, you can kill him, Well,
bye. Apparently,
I'll see you later.
I read an article where she gave an interview and said there was a lot more to this movie. Like, because Ridley Scott said that a final cut was 4.5 hours. That could have been an assembly cut. But that's a lot of material on the cutting room floor. And apparently most of it was Sigourney Weaver and Joel Edgerton's material, because they had a lot of scenes together.
Yeah, I would say that is one of the things I kind of felt lacking. I wanted to see more of Ramses. It was... And I know you guys were talking in the beginning of like commit to, the plagues and God and all of that. And I wanted it to commit more to, well, who is this story about? Because obviously it's like Moses, but then we're kind of given just enough Ramses to not be satisfying. Like I wanted more of, they have the one battle together and you're like, oh, these are brothers. And it's like, but there wasn't really a lot of that. And there is barely any, with his father or his mother. And it, as far as where in the Exodus story it starts much closer to his exile. I feel like we don't get a lot of Moses growing up or Moses as part of the royal family and all of that. Like, I mean, we fill in the blanks because we know the story, but I wanted more of that. I wanted a lot more, because I feel, especially for the payoff he's trying to get of literally Moses and Ramses, the only two people still under the water, like it wasn't there, there to have that moment. I mean, we'll get to the ending, but I do not know why Moses was there in that moment. That didn't make sense to me.
I actually think you unlocked it right there, that this movie becomes more interesting and easier for them to handle if they tell it from Ramses' point of view. So Moses
really
becomes a more secondary character, so that we're from the perspective of somebody where all of this stuff is happening and he's like, what is going on right now? Right? Like, I know you. Like, I thought we were like, bros,
do we know
like,
enough
what's going on?
Of the Exodus story to tell a story from Ramses' point of view where we don't get anything that's just Moses, like, off in the desert, coming back, like it's just Moses is banished. 9 years later, comes back and wreaks all sorts of havoc, and you're like, what is going on? Like that actually sounds way more interesting.
And he hears whispers where it's like, oh, Moses believes he's talking to God, and Ramses is like, wait, what? He believes he's what? Wait, bring him
That's
here.
Moses, I know, yeah.
Although technically, like, how many of the Egyptians talk to their gods? So it's not. It's like, but the fact that Moses is doing it.
True. Yeah. And that Moses would have been saying, let my people go and worship for 3 days outside of town, sort of thing. And put Ramses actually in a more if you want sympathetic sort of thing where it's like, look, I know I can't trust you. I'm not going to let everybody go outside of the town. What are you, nuts? I know you won't come back.
Well, that was the other thing I felt like they missed or maybe took out, unless I'm misremembering, but scripturally, like Ramses lets them go and then calls it off and then lets them go and then calls it, like there was none of that. It was just the one let go at the end, right? Like they didn't have the...
In the book of Exodus, at the end of a couple of the plagues, he's like, fine, go. And then he's like, wait, no, everything's better. No, come back. You can't do anything now. And he basically changes his mind several times.
I don't think they had any of that in this story, in this particular telling.
The plagues happen like on ultra fast speed.
That's true.
It's like
the worst week of Ramses' life.
Right?
I'm actually okay with that.
No,
okay.
I didn't have a problem. I didn't have a problem not having it. Most tellings of Exodus have that, or at least some portion of the changing of the mind and the hardening of his heart. Like there was none of that in this.
Well, I don't know if that's true, because we did have the changing of the mind, because he lets them go, but then he realizes that he's like, no, I should kill these people. Like I should just let them go.
No, which I understand.
So he does have the hardening of the heart.
But that's the very end. Like it happens once. What I'm saying is biblically it happens multiple times.
I don't think I've ever seen a picture where it happens multiple times.
But that's the thing, is they had an opportunity here to do it differently and have something fresh and different and from an alternate perspective. And, I don't think any of us want to sit there and like chase the movie that we think could have been, sort of thing. But at the same time, I think what we're all struggling with is there are those structural problems. Now, is it that they wrote a script that supported a 4-hour cut and they got the order when the studio saw the 4-hour cut and they said, guys, no, we can't do this. Right. We're, who did they wind up going up against when they were released?
I don't know. But yeah, you have you have Ben Kingsley in this teeny role,
Yeah.
Not that you have to only put Ben Kingsley in big roles, but
But the thing is, even that idea that it has some super long cut, this was shot in 74 days. That's fewer days than they shot Raiders of the Lost Ark. I cannot fathom what a workman-like atmosphere it must be for a Ridley Scott film, where he's like, okay, we got a 6,000-page script and we got a couple of months. Let's knock it out, folks. And it's like, it's just boom, that's moving at lightning speed. And I looked it up really quick. It opened and then it wound up going right up against The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies, which I still haven't seen because the first two were so terrible.
That's right. It was a Christmas release, early December.
Yeah. It came out, I think that it came out in December. Did it have 1 week without Battle of Five? Like, did Battle of Five Armies come in the second week and like kick its butt? Or, the following week, it came at second place to Hobbit 3, The Hobbiting. So.
The Desolation of Smaug, yeah.
Yeah. No, it was, whichever one it was. It was the third Hobbit movie. But I mean that, to speak to your point from earlier, Tristan, you tell me Christian Bale's going to be in a movie. I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. You tell me that Ben Kingsley and Sigourney Weaver and all of that stuff, and it's directed by Ridley Scott. Yeah, you got my attention, at least a little bit of attention. But I wonder if I think the movie is done no favors by the fact that the photography in it, while it's going for like that sort of grittier feel, I think it works against the epic feel that they're going for. I think it undercuts their desire for the epic. That's just my own feeling of it. I didn't get any shots that I felt were these big awe-inspiring things. I got plenty of shots that were the CG establishment sweep or the multiply the crowd running alongside sweep. And like, it just felt assembled, but not epic.
I mean, I would have
Get
much
that.
preferred a movie that, yeah, that's the backdrop, but let's really go real close into the characters. Because, I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's a weird time to make this kind of movie because, yeah, you're right. You're in the early 2010s. In 2014, you're hitting a lot of this pushback of, now we're casting for, you have to cast the right race, to be in these types of movies. Like, that is now a thing. And so you have that pushback. You have, again, it's like, okay, you want to make a grand epic, but it's like the age of grand epics is already passed. Like, what is there not to see that'd be like, oh, that's a wonderfully rendered giant shot of all of Egypt. Great. Like, we can do that. That's not there's no grandeur to that anymore. Instead, take it small, take it tight to the characters.
Well,
I'm just glad I
like-
could see things at night. Because sometimes it gets too dark and you can't even, like, oh, it's all by torchlight. It's like, great, 30 minutes of a single light source.
Yes.
To reference two other Ridley Scott films, Kingdom of Heaven and Gladiator, I mean, there was a lot of CGI backdrops in Gladiator, and one very famous shot of Maximus in the middle of the arena, and we see they do a complete pan of him, like they circle him, and we see a pan of the Colosseum in all its glory. That's CGI, but it's amazing and it's epic. We're going to keep using that word. It's grandiose and it's beautiful and you feel it. And I don't want to speak for you, John, but I think that's what we were lacking in this movie.
Yes.
Is that we got the shots, but we didn't feel how grandiose it was to the characters, even with the Red Sea coming down.
Right.
I didn't really feel like there was any danger. It didn't feel real to me. Like the way that it worked in the 50s with Cecil B. DeMille and his Red Sea coming down. That felt dangerous. The way that the music was swelling, the screams that you heard, and just like it was a long lens on a faraway shot, and then you see the water coming in, just like gobbling up the horses one by one by one by one by one, and like it just gets louder and louder and louder, and like the wind cuts out. In this version, it was pretty much just music, swell, and then water.
I think part of that has to do with the realism that he was going for, of like, oh, it was a tsunami and an earthquake, and so all the water basically just leaves. It's not really a parting of the sea, like, because they're not doubling down on the supernatural, where it's like, it must be supernatural when literally Moana style, a 50-foot wide corridor of air opens up in the middle of the Red Sea. Like that, there's nothing that can justify that. But this was like, all the water just decided to head out towards the ocean for, a couple hours and then came roaring back.
And that's the thing. Like when at the beginning of the movie, well, at the end of the first act, when Moses is in his exile and we see him go to the Red Sea, and then he sees that it's low tide and he's at the straits and he can walk across it. I was just like, oh, is that how they're going to do it? Like, it's because that's the thing, is that like you can do that. Like there's the Red Sea and the Reed Sea, and sometimes they can get mixed up in books and in translations and everything like that. I'm like, is that how they're going to cross? Is by crossing the strait? But you can't do that in a chariot. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, if that's the way they're going to go, I got to, like, as a believer, as someone who believes in Exodus and God and the Bible and a carpenter who walks across water, like, it excited me that they were going to go with that realistic approach. And they could even have, like, the tide come in where they're trying, like, where the Egyptians are trying to cross it, and the current just swoops them off. Maybe it doesn't kill every single one of them in an epic fashion, but it swoops them off. It's just the more I'm talking about it, the more it feels lopsided.
Yeah, and to speak to the effects, when I see that wall of water, you said it. You didn't feel any danger. I didn't feel any danger either. I was like, oh, it's a wall of water.
Even with Moses right beneath it, I'm like, Moses, what are you doing there? Why are you not back on the shore? And I'm like, oh no, he's crushed. I honestly was expecting the water to cover them and a bubble to protect them both, because it was Moses and Ramses was just lucky he was close to Moses. But nope. We didn't. I'm surprised Ramses lived. Yeah. Because Ramses, I'm like, how did you live? Like, granted, I get, the water's not that deep, but like the weight of that, sorry, if you were in the path of that wave, you're gone.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's when the mysticism comes into it. But like my wife asked the same question. She's like, how on earth is he alive? And I said, because Ramses II didn't drown to death in real life.
Yeah. A funny side note is my youngest came in while I was, watching the horses and, the chariots going and the cliff crumbling and all of that stuff. And she said, oh, I hope the horses didn't actually get hurt. And I was like, I thought to myself, I was like, yeah, that's actually a pretty good angle. And as I recall the story, there's that one shot that felt like such an unnecessary shot to try to elicit some sort of reaction. Whereas there's that single horse as the waves start come crushing down. And I'm like, that's not necessary.
It's the only one running, and it's like, run, horsey, run. It's like, oh, okay, sure. It's not a real horse.
I liked it. It worked for me. I thought that was a really interesting shot.
I thought it was just, it can be an interesting shot, but I don't think it added anything to what was going on. It was like, oh, okay. I mean, like it comes across to me that it was tacked on to try to give that sense of danger that I wasn't feeling in that moment. That I'd feel bad for the horsey and the horsey getting swept up. And then I'd be like, oh no. And the people could die too. And I'm like, it was misdirected. I think it was an unnecessary shot. And there were so many things that could have been used for that to work better. There are so many things about this that just, I don't know. I mean, I find it funny that we're sitting here and we're talking about how we'd all be fine with like, okay, go one direction, go the other. We don't have a problem with the historicity, but it was actually banned in several countries because of the quote unquote historical inaccuracies. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic, because I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, okay, I'd like to see a list of, because the quote unquote historical inaccuracies varied from country to country that had a problem with them. I was like, I love that. I think that's fantastic. That's such a window into different points of view, as it were.
It's so true, like especially the geopolitical ramifications of retelling the story in a different way. Like it was banned in one country for how it portrayed Egyptians. It was banned in another country for how it portrayed the Hebrews. And it was banned in another country because of the hangings, because that didn't exist back then. And it was banned in another country because it showed armed Hebrews. It was banned in another country because of the whitewashing. Yeah, it's just, yeah, like whenever and they knew this, like they knew this when making this movie, that you touch anything with a religious text, with an Abrahamic religion, you're going to get it banned in some countries. You're going to get picket lines. You're going to get angry people tweeting. It's going to be tons of stuff like that. You can't have a biblical movie without the backlash. It's just not possible. And so for them to not pick a direction, and like, because they didn't please anyone.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Exactly right. I think the most interesting one was Morocco, banned it the day before its premiere because of the personification of the voice of God. But then once they edited some of the dialogue, they were like, yeah, okay, we can release it now. And I'd love to know what specifically about it.
You mean things that the child said? Because that was the voice of God, right? Did anybody else feel...
That's his messenger.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not God. That's his messenger.
No, that's true. But did anyone feel like the burning bush was kind of an afterthought in the background of that one shot? Like I'm like, oh yeah, I guess the bush is there. Like it just was very underwhelming.
Well, I actually liked it that way, personally, because it added to the surrealism, because he's in the mud, just his face is exposed. He thinks he's broke his legs. He's talking to a kid he doesn't know is a messenger of God, who thinks that maybe it's God after a while. But then it was a visual way of telling us that it's not God. That Malik the angel is not God, because the burning bush is there. If the burning bush is there, then God's not going to be right in front of the burning bush. God is represented in the burning bush. And so I thought, from a visual perspective and as a visual medium in storytelling, I really liked that portrayal of it. And it allowed a little bit more freedom in my opinion, with Malik to go a little weird. Because when you read Exodus, I know this is going to piss people off, but God comes off as really crazy in Exodus at times. And Malik kind of gave that vibe of, I think, the Old Testament God in Exodus, where it's like a kid who found his dad's gun. It's just, that's the kind of feeling that you get. Which way are you going to go? How crazy is this going to be? How intense is it going to be? And Moses even touches on that, where it's just this isn't right. And Malik's just and you think this is? It's just I love the philosophical back and forth. I would have loved to have seen more of that personally.
But not in Morocco.
Yeah, well, definitely not in Morocco. It's an interesting enough angle, but I think it all comes back to that fact that they just couldn't find the voice for the movie, and so you wind up with this melange. There's almost a sense in my brain that Scott sort of knew, it just didn't click. And because of who he is, he was like, all right, let's just wrap it up. We'll get it out. I'm already working on my next film. It's fine. It's fine. Let's just get it out the door here.
He did say that a director's cut might be coming.
I wish him the best of luck, because not to tip my hand too early, but I'm not in a rush to watch a longer cut of this film.
So you would not watch, if this was released tomorrow, you wouldn't watch it?
Probably not.
I mean,
I'm not really in the mood to watch a longer
Ramses
cut.
POV cut. I'd watch that.
Yeah.
Now, the father of the director's cut, you wouldn't watch one of his director's cut after seeing Kingdom of Heaven's director's cut, knowing how much of an improvement that was. You wouldn't give it a shot.
There's context here that's important. I never saw the theatrical version of Kingdom of Heaven. I only ever watched the director's cut. So I didn't have a sour feeling going into it. And I think
I personally don't watch any movie until a director's cut is released, and then I only watch that.
Wow, it took you a long time to
pure.
It took you a long time to get around to Apocalypse Now and Blade Runner then. So
it was actually. I hadn't watched Apocalypse Now until the director's cut.
There you go. Well, final cut technically. So yeah. No, I mean, the thing is, I'd be curious enough that eventually I'm sure I'd get around to it and be like, sure, let me give it another try. But I was tuning in and out of this thing, honestly. It just had so much trouble with its narrative flow that and there were so many things that I just considered perfunctorily inevitable that I was just like, okay, so I wasn't emotionally investing in this movie as it went along, because I was, from one aspect, I'm like, I know what comes next. And from the other aspect, it wasn't doing anything interesting with that expectation to make me, throw me off guard. In the beginning part, I was like, oh, this is a little different. This has got a different feel to it. And I think you both said this as well, earlier, where it's like, oh, it starts off a little bit different. And then at the end, it's like, okay, we're going along.
What'd you guys think of the prophecy? If a leader is saved by another, then that too shall lead. I've never heard that anywhere else. Was that pure, Ridley Scott fiction? Okay.
That's just chicken gizzards.
I felt that was a weird thing to focus on, because it was kind of confusing.
Because the big prophecy is the fact that Moses is a Hebrew. You're adding another prophecy on top of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little weird. Like even when like Moses went to Seti and they started talking about it, like I wasn't sure what was going on. Like my wife and I, even like when Ramses was staring down Moses, she's like, "What is going on? What is he doing? Why is he staring at him?"
He's almost about to like I read it as like he's about to throw the spear at him and kill him because he's worried about him becoming a leader, right? Like that's the vibe I was getting.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like
Reed.
once he's rescued, he's like, "Oh crap, that's Moses," and he gets his spear ready, and you're like, "Are you going to chuck that at Moses?" Because that's what I thought he was going to do. And then the tide turned, and the battle was over, and he didn't get his chance.
I don't know what vibe it was going for. Personally, it was a confusing thing. Like it was unnecessary. It was unneeded because I felt like they could have. I felt like they did an okay job of developing the relationship. And that just kind of muddied the waters a little bit more. So before we wrap up here, I do want to talk about one thing that we haven't really talked about was the performances, which I thought was probably some of the best part of this movie was the performances. Was there anything that stuck out to you, or conversely, was there anybody that you thought didn't work or give a bad performance?
I wouldn't say bad performance, but I think there were people where definitely they weren't given enough time to develop their performance, or rather, not enough of their performance made it to the final cut. Bale did what he typically does, which is he was there and he was in it and he was making it work as best he could. I thought that Edgerton did a fine job. I thought there were some scenes where he was, really effective. I bought his sorrow and his rage at the death of his son. I bought that, and that was really well done. I'm
glad that they established that he actually cared about his son before the death happened.
Yes, but was there anything where I was like, "Oh, this is a tremendous performance by John Turturro," or "Oh my goodness"? Sigourney Weaver, that's why you put her in a film. No, there was not really any of that. And I think probably if in fact there was that longer cut, it's because this just got hacked down to the bone. And they were like, let's just get it out the door. 2.5 hours. We can get enough showings and make some of our money back.
Yeah, I mean, I liked all the performances. There were some times, though, when I became very aware that I was listening to a movie in English. Like, just some of the phrases they would use or little kind of like mannerism stuff. I'm like, okay, like it didn't feel like they were talking in a time thousands of years ago. It felt like, the modern play of Exodus, told today. You know what I mean? It was very subtle. Like it wasn't terrible, but did either of you get that vibe at all in some of the dialogue?
I got that from Mendelsohn and Weaver pretty hard.
Yeah.
Where they didn't know what movie they were in.
Definitely from Mendelsohn, which I liked. Again, I liked his performance, but again, like I joked before we were recording that if any of these lines you could juxtapose with footage from Rogue One, and it's pretty much the exact same character, and because the dialogue doesn't feel of a time, it's just dialogue.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think to me, Christian Bale did fine. I agree with John. Like
no Batman voice. So that was
he did what he needed to do. But to me, Edgerton as Ramses II was phenomenal. I thought he was stellar. I absolutely loved his performance. And Darren, I'm with you. I would have loved to have seen a whole lot more. And according to Sigourney Weaver, there was a whole lot more. Hopefully we'll get to see it someday, because I, for one, would love to see a director's cut to see if there is that kind of improvement from Kingdom of Heaven theatrical to Kingdom of Heaven director's cut. I would love to see that, because this movie definitely interested me more the second time around than it did the first, as I said. So I think let's... none of us talked about how Aaron Paul is in this movie, and why on earth is Aaron Paul in this movie?
I still think it's funny that Aaron Paul was cast to play Joshua when there was another character named Aaron. I mean, it's like it just seems like a gimme right there.
It's even spelled the same way.
His part was definitely cut down to the bone.
Yeah.
Because he's the first person that Moses sees being beaten, at the work site. And it's like,
I
there's
felt
a sense there was
that
more
was going to
him.
be Aaron or something. Like, that's the thing with Aaron. Aaron was like kind of this, like, are they going to double down and we're going to get more Aaron? Because I felt like he was barely in this movie. Like,
Oh yeah, I feel like Aaron was in here less than Joshua, and Joshua was barely in it.
Exactly.
And yeah, like the character of Joshua is such an interesting character, especially as they get older and move on. And when Moses passes the torch, he doesn't pass it to Aaron; he passes it to Joshua. And yeah, it's so like there's more footage out there. There's more story out there, and I want to see it. And I just hate that we don't get to rate that. We have to rate this. And it is interesting that from an entertainment perspective, from a Hollywood entertainment perspective, we just are like, yep, Moses was a prince, and it was Seti was Pharaoh at first, and then Ramses II was Pharaoh after that. And it is possible that it was Seti and Ramses, but not probable. And so we could be dealing with completely different historical figures here. And in some cases, some people think that we could have even been dealing with a female pharaoh during the time of Moses, which I think would have been a really interesting read, just for something different. Just to see, like I would love to see an Exodus story where it's not based off of Ramses and Seti, as we've always seen it, because like I said, it's a high probability that it wasn't them.
That's true, because the Bible, it just says Pharaoh. It doesn't say like the name of the Pharaoh.
Nope.
Yep.
And the time is always wishy-washy. And also pharaohs are known to remove their failures from their own history. So we have no idea, like there's so many contradictions in ancient Egyptian histories, because lots of the time it's just made up, or it's inflammatory, or it's what's the word I'm looking for? Exaggerated. And and so things are weird about, like, there's certain things in Exodus that are very much historical fact, and that can be backed up by scientific, geological fact, but we can't nail down which pharaoh it actually was. So I would have loved to have seen a different read than Ramses II, even though I love the
I'm
name
just
Ramses.
sad that Ramses didn't go Moses.
I know, I wanted Christian Bale really to say, like, are you a master builder or a master butcher to Mendelssohn? All right, well, let's get these. Okay, so how John, how many commandments are you giving this motion
15. I mean, 10.
10
commandments.
So if we're doing commandments, did we just change the scale to 10 instead of 5? Because I just need to know where I need to fall.
How
on
many
which
tragic
scale.
horses died for you?
There you go.
I'm down with that.
How many tragic horses? How many horses did you murder to give your rating?
Honestly,
of this film?
I just am going to be generous here because I'm in a generous spirit, and I'm going to give it a 2 because I just recently watched a movie that I gave a 1, and that one was put together like garbage, and this one was at least put together by professionals, so I'll give this one a 2.
It's professional garbage.
I'll take professional garbage over amateur garbage any day of the week.
True.
Darren, how many chariots falling off of ledges?
It's like, I'm not going up there. Look at that. Well, Moses must have known that chariots could. I don't know. They were overthinking that whole part of the chase. But I'm also going to give it a 2 for very similar reasons as John did. Where was it absolutely terrible? No. Is it my favorite telling of the Exodus story? Not by a long shot. And I'm just happy I could see a lot of the night shots, because normally in this era, those would be literally pitch black with a torch, and you're lucky if you get 10-foot candles out of it. But no, I mean, again, to answer kind of your previous question though, Tristan, if there was a Ramses cut, I would definitely watch that. I think that would be really interesting. And I don't think Scott is going to completely like remove 80% of Moses from the Exodus, so I don't really see that happening. But hey, stranger things have happened in film, so you never know.
Well, me, when I started this, I wanted to give it a 3 because I felt like being generous because I liked it so much more the second time. And because I really loved the characters and the portrayals of those characters, removing the controversy. And I thought people gave really great performances. And like for me, a 3 is liked it, but it has its issues. But after talking with you guys,
grind them down.
You kind of ground me down a little bit and made me realize, oh yeah, you're right. That doesn't work. This doesn't work. Even though I like this, it doesn't really work. Like that kind of thing. So I'm going to give it a little bit more than you guys, but I'm going to give it a 2.5, where 2.5 is kind of a mediocre read for me. And I think that's where I'm going to settle. That's where I'm going to land. So you guys gave it a 2. I gave it a 2.5. But I would watch the director's cut of this in a heartbeat, if that says anything. So thank you everybody for listening. Please continue on with us in our journey to the next historical epic of Ridley Scott. And Darren, what are we doing next week?
Oh, next week, we'll set your Wayback Machine. We're jumping from 2014 with Exodus, Gods and Kings back to 2000 with Gladiator, set in 180 AD. I think this won a little bit more Oscars than Exodus did. So just
yes, just a few more.
Just a few more.
And let me tease it with the fact that I will relay seeing this in the theater. I had one of the worst audience members in history the first time I saw this film.
I want to hear that story, John.
Yeah,
that's criminal, man.
It's well, he waited to reveal himself until the very end, and it was like, really, guy, really? So yes, it was something else, and it's burned in my brain. So I will relay the story next week.
All right, Darren, where can we find you online?
They can go to drsci-fi.com, DRSCIFI, to check out my other podcasts, projects, photos, and more.
John.
Look for Castle Junkie. I'm out there, and I'm here on the network on Aggressive Negotiations. That's me. What about you?
Look out for @TheInsaneRobin on Twitter and Letterboxd, as well as go to thenerdparty.com, where you can find all of our projects, not just ours, but everybody else's that is on the network. And we have some great stuff coming at you every single day of the week. So please continue as we keep the door open on the House of Scott.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.